using grapefruit juice every single night before applying RU58841 will limit the chances of systemic anti-androgenic effects. Hello everyone, today I want to discuss RU58841 and methods of minimizing systemic anti-androgenic side effects when using it. I'm going to talk a little bit about its pharmacokinetics and its properties before getting into the actual methods, because I think it's important to understand exactly how these things work. What is RU58841? It's a non-steroidal anti-androgen, and it works by binding to the androgen receptors and preventing DHT from binding, and that's how it's used to treat androgenetic alopecia. So it's important to understand that once binding to the androgen receptor, different molecules exert different actions. You can have some molecules that do something called agonism and antagonism, and agonism is like the activation and upregulation of certain genes, and you can also have different classifications for how much they agonize or antagonize. So for example, I think the three classifications are weak, partial, and silent. Partial means it exerts agonism or antagonism in specific androgen receptors and different effects in other areas of the body. This is typical for SARMs, non-steroidal SARMs. RU58841 is, in my opinion, a silent antagonist of the androgen receptor, meaning it binds to the androgen receptor and doesn't exert any effect or any upregulation of genes. In 18 preclinical trials, 9 looked at its systemic side effects and all observed 0 systemic side effects. And this was also backed up in its phase 1 and 2 clinical trials. It's also non-steroidal, so there's no negative feedback to your HPG axis. Another important thing about its pharmacokinetics is it has a half-life of 6 hours, whereas its 2 metabolites, which I'm going to discuss in great depth, have a half-life of 24 hours. In a study, RU58841 was injected at 1 milligram per kilogram, injected straight into the body of rats, and even when this was done, it showed no systemic anti-androgenic effect. The way they measured this was through if there was a statistical significant reduction in seminal vesicle or prostate weight in the rats. Now, RU58841 is metabolized into 2 different molecules called RU59416 and RU56279. The rate at which it's metabolized into these molecules is 93% for RU59416 and 1% for RU56279. For RU56279, which is its non-primary metabolite, it unfortunately in the trials it showed significant anti-androgenic activity, meaning that it reduced seminal vesicle and prostate weight. So if this molecule was to go systemic in a significant amount, or an amount that isn't negligible, it would cause systemic anti-androgenic activity. Fortunately, from this study, we can see it was only metabolized to about 1% of whatever RU58841 concentration was administered. So clear, and by the way, RU59416 was shown to have no anti-androgenic activity systemically, and it's viewed as an inactive metabolite. The researchers believe this was due to its very low affinity for the androgen receptor. Okay, so the question arises if in humans RU58841 will metabolize at the same rate to RU56279, which is the metabolite that can potentially cause systemic anti-androgenic effects. So I looked into some methods of reducing this rate of metabolism so we can maximize RU588's rate of metabolism into the other inactive non-anti-androgenic metabolite. So looking at this paper, I saw that the researchers commented that RU58841 is metabolized into RU56279 through a process called N-dealkynation. This is a process where an alkyl group is removed from a nitrogen atom. According to a few papers online, actually there's lots of evidence online, N-dealkynation occurs through the cytochrome P450 enzyme family. So logic would suggest that limiting N-dealkynation via inhibition of the cytochrome P40 enzyme family would convert less RU58841 into its anti-androgenic metabolite RU56279 and maximize its conversion into the other metabolite, which is more favorable from a side effect perspective, RU59416. So it begs the question, what can we do to inhibit the cytochrome P450 enzyme family? Well, we've actually known how to do this for quite a while now. Grapefruit juice. We've known for a long time grapefruit juice can increase the presence of certain drugs, and this is because the cytochrome P450 enzyme family is one of the it's the main enzyme that metabolizes drugs. So by inhibiting it, it increases the presence of drugs. But in this case, it's actually beneficial because, the metabolite we don't want is converted from this enzyme. So inhibiting it would decrease side effects. So my novel theory is using grapefruit juice every single night before applying RU58841 will limit the chances of systemic anti-androgenic effects. What are some other easier, less complex tips to reducing harm on RU58841? Without falling into the trap of just giving an arbitrary recommendation, because this isn't an exact science, you could limit the accumulation of RU58841 and its metabolites in the body by taking a day off each fortnight. The reason being, the main risk of taking RU58841 is drug accumulation, because the amount you're applying is such a small amount. It's unlikely to affect the totality of androgen receptors in your system. So if the amount you apply builds up every single time after administration, then you actually do face the biggest risk of systemic anti-androgenic side effects. So taking a day off each fortnight will prevent any accumulation, which by the way is very unlikely on its own, because RU58841 has a half-life of 6 hours and its metabolites of around 24 hours. So but on that logic, every time you apply it at night, the amount from the day before would have been mostly metabolized. What's another okay, before I get into that, if the side effects persist after taking 1 day off each fortnight, consider taking a day off each week. And then if they keep persisting, you have to maybe consider the other harm reduction methods. Stopping microneedling. So for minoxidil application, microneedling is beneficial because it punctures holes, allowing the minoxidil topical solution to absorb better into the skin, and thus causing an effect on your scalp and doing its job basically. So the skin acts as a natural barrier for topical solutions, and in the case of RU58841, this is actually a good thing because it limits the amount that is absorbed, and thus it limits the amount that actually goes systemic. And 5% applied topically without microneedling is the tried and true sweet spot for RU58841 with limited side effects. So yeah, no microneedling is my recommendation. Lowering the concentration, I don't really need to explain this much, but the fewer RU58841 molecules and metabolites absorbed systemically, the less side effects. So an 8% solution is more likely to cause side effects than a 5%. And there's also I'm not sure if companies provide a 2% solution, but there was actually a study that evaluated a 2% RU58841 solution and concluded that it did have some efficacy. Obviously not as much as 5%, but undoubtedly it would have a lower risk of side effects. At the end of the day, RU58841 is an experimental drug. There's no published human clinical trials as far as I'm aware, and I've done many hours trying to scour the internet to see if there's any relics of results, and I couldn't find anything. All there is statements made by the company and press releases, which we can gain a lot of valuable insights from, but nonetheless, it would definitely be nice to have these results. My point being that it's a sort of use at your own risk situation. If you're experiencing side effects, the best thing to do is definitely to cease the use of it. However, I just wanted to make this video for those who are unwilling to cease the use of it because they've experienced such good results and they want to continue using it because of these really good results. These are some ways that I've thought of reducing harm when using RU58841. Thank you everyone, take care and stay safe.